I'm still trying to figure out how both of these comics came from the exact same writer, and one of them is absolutely fantastic, and the other one is a chore to read.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other two books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere today.
Hi everyone, it's Shawn here, and I'm going to be doing a pair of comic review videos back to back. Now, the publishers of Concrete Comics got in touch with me on social media, and they let me know that the fourth issue of Acolyte, the fourth issue of Odina, and the first issue of Kandake were available for pre-order a month ago, and when I heard this, I put in my pre-orders because I didn't want to miss out on the latest books in the Concrete universe. And after reading both Odina and Kandake, I have to wonder how we got these books to be like night and day, because one of these comics is absolutely fantastic, while the other struggles as related to moving its story forward. Now, I'm going to start out talking about Odina in this video because Odina is a book that I believe many aspiring comic writers could learn a bit more about the craft of storytelling from the series of mistakes that are made with this book. Now, the Odina character has struggled in the Concrete universe, and the Odina book is the weakest out of all of the Concrete Comics books, and that's been a major problem with the Odina series. The Odina series suffers from an extremely underdeveloped character who really never comes to shine in her own book, and she never really has a strong voice and a strong personality, and in some ways it reminds me of some of the worst traits of most Wonder Woman comics, because one of the big problems with Princess Diana is that while she's the world's first female superhero, she really lacks any sort of personality or voice that really grabs the reader and makes you care about her character. And that's been something that has plagued the Odina character for some time, as related to the first 4 issues of her book, which have been a major chore for me to get through, and it's been a real struggle getting through this book. Now, this book really, it just suffers from really some of the weakest storytelling, and that continues to be a big problem here in this 4th issue. Yes, Odina has a great look, but she really doesn't stand out as a character the same way Acolyte does, and the same way that Kandake does. Both of those characters really just come to life in the page, and they just really make you want to go out here and read the entire book through and anticipate the upcoming issue. Now, this 4th issue of Kandake opens up really passively with a battle sequence inside of what looks like the X-Men's Danger Room, but the whole sequence is really passive looking, and it really doesn't draw you in. We get an establishing shot at the top of the page, but this page could have been better done as a splash with both with the leader of Sister Circle X and your Odina battling it out. It would have been a much stronger page, but I guess they wanted to condense things so that they could move the story forward. But you don't want to cheap out like that. What you want is a strong splash to open things up, and you want that to be the page that lets us know what's going on. But what we get here is sequences that just go basically nowhere. I mean, we got Odina and the sister from Sister Circle X. They're fighting and training in this sequence, and she's talking about how much potential Odina has. But by this 4th issue, I'm losing my patience with this book, and if this story really doesn't go anywhere at all, I'm going to be dropping this book, because most people, they would be patient with this book, but this book really hasn't really picked up and been strong. Now, we get expository sequences as related to how Lady Ty's origin starts, and this is a very interesting sequence because it reminds me a lot of what I did when I was doing the Esteem character as related to her origin. Now, in this one, they have the character of Atum, who is considered to be the first god of the Heliopolitan gods, according to some myths. And he's looking at the earth, and he's looking at how things are. Now, your Atum, who is out here, he's just surveying things, and then he goes and travels the world, travels into the underworld, fights a demon, and then he creates the gods of Heliopolis, and then they create humanity. So we get a very interesting expository sequence, which leads into your Atum and your Isis, as they're saying, coming together, and this leading to the birth of Lady Ty. And your Lady Ty in the origin reminds me a lot of what I was doing with the Esteem character, saying that she was supposed to be the first avatar as related to humanity, and being the child of the gods who would be over humanity. And that's what I was doing with the Esteem character, and it looks like they're doing the same thing with Lady Ty, saying that she was the first so-called hybrid of human and god, or being over the gods, and this is what led to chaos and war taking over the earth, and this is what led to your Atum and the gods going out here and banishing these hybrids because they were a threat to the human race. And this was an interesting sequence which builds into your Lady Ty, who was talking to one of her worshippers and looking to go out here and betray that worshipper and bringing demons onto the earth. This was a very interesting sequence that could have built into something, but sadly, the writer here really doesn't understand how to set up the pacing to build this up, and then what they do is lead to a major letdown as related to the story as Odina comes in, because the problem with this book is that everybody is more interesting than Odina, and that's a big problem when you're working on a comic. In a comic, you have to, again, answer 3 critical questions like a screenwriter: who is the main character, what do they want, and why should we care? And the problem is that Odina doesn't answer the critical question of who is the main character, and we really don't know what she wants to do outside of beating Lady Ty after being defeated in the 3rd issue, but we're not really getting to see how Odina is learning her lesson, and she's not really a really well-developed character. Again, she feels like a background player in her own book, and that's a real serious problem as related to the Odina comic. The Odina comic really doesn't make it where you really want to root for Odina, because her personality and her voice are really weak, and that really prevents you from getting into the book and anticipating the next issue. The other problem with this book is it's paced in a way that doesn't really bring you right into the action. There's a lot of time spent on expository sequences to try to flesh out the Lady Ty character, who herself is an interesting villain, but the problem is that the heroine of the book isn't very strong, and that problem really prevents this book from being as great as it possibly could. I mean, with Acolyte number 4, I feel like I'm reading one of the great books from the 90s Superman run, because your Acolyte is a fantastic character, and with Kandake, she just basically becomes to life in the pages of Concrete Comics, and that's the problem Odina has. She doesn't really come to life as a character. Her story isn't that compelling, and as a guy who's worked on a character like Isis and Esteem, I know how to put this kind of story together and make it where you care about the characters, but I don't see that kind of thing with this whole story with your Odina. She reminds me a lot of what Isis is, but she doesn't have that personality or that voice to really stand out and be the center of the story. I mean, basically, when I look at Odina, she's just in her own book, but in the background when she needs to be at the focus as the center of the book. And that's why I'm sitting there scratching my head, because you got the same writer on Odina that you have on Kandake, but Kandake is absolutely fantastic. I mean, everything Odina wants to be, Kandake is, and Kandake is a far stronger book and a far better book than Odina. And it's a shame, because Odina could have been interesting, but she needs to have, I believe, a little bit of time to get her character developed, because this is just not working out. I mean, 4 issues into a book, we should be getting to know your Odina a bit better. We should see her overcoming several villains, but she's stuck in a meandering storyline that basically goes nowhere. I mean, I wish that your Odina had the pacing and story pace of Acolyte and the personality and voice of Kandake, because had Odina had those things, it would be a book that would be one of the stronger books. But when I look at it, it's one of the weakest books in the whole Concrete Comics universe, next to Decimation Earth. I mean, this book, again, I've been patient with this book, and I've been trying to see it through. I mean, I know that the writer put in a lot of work on this book. I mean, the research on the gods is meticulous, but this book, really, it just has so many problems, and I'm just wondering where this book is going, because, again, 4 issues at basically $10 to $15 a copy. This is getting expensive, and the problem with Odina is I'm not seeing much entertainment value for my dollar. And I would if I wasn't out here doing these review videos, I would have dropped this book if I was collecting comics back in the 80s for going nowhere. And it's a shame, because, again, as a guy who creates black heroines, I really was looking forward to this book. But this book doesn't really give us a heroine with any sort of strength of character or substance. And that's a big problem with Odina, is that we really don't get to see how she cares about people and wants to be a heroine. She just doesn't really connect with you as a heroine, and that's a big problem with this Odina book. I mean, 4 issues in, and while the backstory is fantastic, the character who's leading the story isn't really giving you a reason to see her as a hero or continue buying her adventures in the future. Now, if you want to pick up my first comic, Easting No Good Deed, you can find it on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to pick up the adventures of the goddess next door, Isis, and Hell's aspiring angel, Easting, you can find their stories on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, along with the stories of the Gothic next door, Matilda Crowley, in the Spinsterella trilogy. And you can find all those books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com and other online booksellers. And if you want to see me do more comic review videos and have the money to support great independent comic creators like Concrete Comics and pick up their comics online and be able to review them like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Easting Horror of a Hyena Woman. Hell's aspiring angel takes on a wicked werewolf in this action-packed all-new Easting series adventure. Get Easting Horror of a Hyena Woman in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere.